Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber, and I'm your host. My guest today is Matthew Knowles. Hi.
Hi, Wanaka.
So wonderful to have you, and thank you for coming. So, I like to start by asking you, how did you get to the place where you are now in the way you see the world?
It's a big question, man. It's a very big question. How did I get to see the world the way that I see it now? Definitely a process, Monica. It's a very good question. Every human experiences, for sure, I would imagine. As far as I go, I guess that question requires a bit of a summary. Obviously, we don't have that much time. I'm 55. So let's pull up the highlights then. The highlights. I kind of take a look at things from a broad picture and work down to specifics as needed. From a broad picture standpoint, I do recognize at a young age that I had a belief in a source, a creator, that seemed to always be in my background by default. The idea of that I wasn't alone seems to me to have always been there in the background. I do recall going to various churches that parents sent me to and learning various ideas with regards to God and Jesus and Mary from a Catholic church upbringing initially. But I never heard in any of those localities anything that came close to what I was already experiencing within myself, to be honest. I never read the Bible or anything of that nature. So I've, from a young age, had that experience. As you get older, there are life events that take place. People come and they go. There's tragedy. There's death of, caretakers and, people in your life. There's arguments. There's conflicts. There's seeming injustices, and various things that take place, and you witness as I went along in the world, divorces and different things, conflicts within families, different things, and I went about my life within those things that were outside of my control, as a young child. You go with the flow. You don't have much. When I got on my own after college and started working on my own, I did have quite a bit of, at the age of 20, 21, something of that nature, I did have a lot of inclination for introspection. I did go and find quiet places and hidden beaches and sand dunes to find time with nature for introspection. I started to recognize coincidences in life in my teens that I equated to with some sort of divine intervention. coincidences and meeting people that just seemed too bizarre to be mere chance. And I have always had a belief in, without calling it, I never heard the word metaphysical, but without calling it anything, in what I now, term others call metaphysical nature of this experience. I went through, as I said, a period of introspection. I understood, I hadn't read the Bible or anything of that nature yet, but I understood, the concept of baptism. I remember one time in my early 20s finding a hidden beach in southern Florida. I was in Jacksonville, Florida, in southern Georgia, sorry. I drove across the border, and I remember sitting there in the wilderness and just feeling like I wanted to break through the illusion of all of the foolishness I saw in the world, all of the injustices and things that just didn't seem to make sense to me, that would be an aspect of the truth of the way this place is. And I just couldn't understand it. I needed to reconcile it. And I had an inner sense of a necessity of surrender to something about myself, some aspect of my identity that needed surrender. There was a temptation to believe, especially after going through college, in a lot of systems of the world, an adoption of belief systems and the way things are done, and the popular method of looking at the world and the popular methods of going about living in the world. It didn't resonate as something to keep doing, because the way that the world was going, it seemed insane. Why do you want me to go into a system of the world? And it seems to be pretty dysfunctional in the result. And I didn't quite understand how to reconcile what the world was teaching me to do and be like with the outcome that I saw, war and all. It just didn't make sense. And I remember sitting on the beach, and I just had an inclination to dive in the ocean and cleanse myself. And so I went and had a personal baptism of the heart. And it had a real therapeutic effect. It really did. I remember, I undressed and I went and I came back from my being submerged, and it meant something to me to do that. It was my sort of commitment to giving up on trying to do life on my own, and that I needed to surrender to divine sort of wisdom somehow. And if it was available, please, I'm open to receive it. That I'm not happy with my attempt to do this completely on my own. And as I was sitting there on the sand dune, being very calm, very, very peaceful, I looked over to my left, and there's next to a shrub on the sand dune is an armadillo. And he's like 2 or 3 feet from me. And he's just sitting there, calm as can be, as calm as I was. And I thought, wow, he's not afraid of me, and this seems natural. And to me, it was kind of a sign of something, that my pact was heard, that my commitment, for me, it was personal. Again, metaphysical type experience. And so that was in my early 20s. I had, college loans to pay off, and so necessity to, continue, in the development of resumes, and and got into tourism and hospitality, and I traveled the world and was a salesperson for resorts in the Florida Keys, and in other places in Florida. And I attended various churches, different types, not Roman Catholic anymore, but just whoever I met or came into contact with, just to start to share, just to really see in relationship if other human beings were experiencing the same thing I was. And there was a lot of connection and similarities in some cases, and in some cases there were, again, just sort of divergent opinions. many of which, many of what opinions sort of I went divergent on had to do with sort of ideas of specialness, that our church is special and other churches don't really, have the truth and we have the truth. And while I appreciated the love and whatnot, felt within the relationships, the ideas of specialness usually chased me away from being at that church. And so I tended to resort back to studying the Bible and the New Testament on my own. I did have a brother that got me finally reading the Bible because he had some sort of an epiphany, and he was a brother that had a lot of issues himself in his life, struggling with life. And he said, "Matt, this thing is cool. This book is cool. You've got to read this book." And so I started to read it, and I fell in love with it, just the Bible and the New Testament. And I found that I really enjoyed time spent with the Bible, and it was my introduction to Jesus and him as a teacher. And a teacher of truth about life and about another perspective on viewing life that also seemed to tap into a lot of some of the metaphysical things that I was already experiencing in life. And so when I would read something there and it backed up some of the things that I was experiencing on my own, it was a great convincer for me to believe what I was reading was true. So my belief and faith and respect for Jesus started to grow bit by bit, year after year after year. But again, very much sticking to my own self without having any great desire or need to adopt structured thought systems of groups of other people, although still desiring authentic relationships that were reflecting the truth as I was being shown it at that time. And I also recognized that that there was a lot of growth, that it was a continuum, that that knowings, if you will, not necessarily beliefs, but knowings were I mean, to this day, are seen, to this day are a never-ending thing. It seems it's like you can know more. You can know more about truth. You can have more revelation. At least, it doesn't seem to be an end to it. I don't know, in my experience yet. And so, having realized that there was a personal connection that could be had with a book like the Bible, that a teacher like Jesus could talk to you just from some of the scriptures. And by talk to you and have a relationship with you, I mean that you would be having, I would be having a thought or a problem or a concern or a question. And then again, using that whole idea of coincidences thing, that I could randomly go and get like the perfect answer when I recognized that there was a connection to how I was asking the question and what state I was in when I went to go seek an answer of truth. That there was a correlation between my sort of lack of distractedness or lack of, I called it authenticity, me being authentic with myself. But I started to realize that there was definitely a connection with my state, and then also my ability to hear and really believe in the questions that I was asking to get answers on. That a flippant question wasn't answered because it wasn't coming from the right state. I don't know if that is making sense to you, what I'm saying. And so I started to realize correlations like that I had a part to play in this myself, that my ability to be still and quiet enough to listen and hear was also important. And then later on, as I continued to get jobs in other places, and I returned to the Bahamas, where I live now, where I was born, in fact. From Florida, I returned to the Bahamas and worked still in the hotel. I've always been in the hotel industry, resorts, and usually in traveling roles until I returned to the Bahamas, where I settled into leading groups of people, 100 employees, and being a leader in the hotel field. There was a time when I also read a guy by the name of James Redfield back in like 1994. I'm not sure when it was. And he put out a book that intrigued the heck out of me. It was the Celestine Prophecy, talking about coincidences and things. And I'd already been experiencing that. So he had me hooked right away, because, again, it was backing up experiences that I was already having. And he talked a lot of other things about seeing auras and disappearing, and eventually that the body was something, the idea that the world was illusionary hadn't crossed my mind in any way, shape, or form. That the idea of constructing that consciousness, that human consciousness had the ability to construct the physical world that we see, was a new thought to me. And not long after that, I somehow got tied up into studying quantum physics and the whole scientific approach and look that Einstein started, that also backed up the idea that human consciousness has the ability to change the perspective that an individual sees with matter, with what was later learned as the double slit experiment and various things. And I just thought, wow, cool. That starts to make sense, that the world reflected would be an allegory to truth. Even science would somehow be a reflection or an allegory for that which, if you could see it, would be a reflection of the truth of how things were. Because I had prayed, sorry, my dogs, hey, Tux, please be quiet, Tux. I had, sorry about that. And because I had prayed for that too. And so I started to recognize that prayer could be answered because of my relationship to Jesus at first. Again, remember, and I said I always thought that I had a relationship and an understanding of God, always in the background. I never really understood when the churches used to teach, Jesus dying for our sins and paying a ransom, and that we don't have to do anything. That never resonated with me, and I never sort of respected the concept of Jesus being some great human that no one else could be like, and yet, was somehow the gateway to heaven. That never resonated with me as truth, but God did resonate as truth. And then it was not until later on when, as I said, I was reading, the works of Jesus, and then I would have a question, and then it would, read the works, and the answer seemed to be directed to the very question, that I realized that wait a minute, that Jesus is indeed a component here in this experience. And I started to look at the relationship as the Son of God from a perspective that the churches weren't teaching me, so I still pursued and respected Jesus. The other influences that I had after Redfield and quantum physics were, in terms of highlights, some of the highlights that comes to mind would be illness. I had an illness that I started to, at that time, get the impression that my own thinking and that my own thoughts had a relationship to disease in the body in any way, shape, or form. And because of the illness, I had been given in my mind the desire to quiet my mind. And because at that time I had not taken the time to pay attention to sort of inner stillness of thought, and thinking at that time was a bit of a plague. There seemed to be a lot of just pop up, just consistent thinking, especially as I was in my career, thinking and anticipating future problems and future actions that I would do in the future to control future outcomes. I mean, it was, and the more complex I had with my career and my job and the more employees, and it seemed as if that control of future possibilities so that they were financially successful and relationally successful required me to be a forecaster of future events. And so I spent a tremendous amount of time in thought and in future thought. And when disease came, I recognized that skill that I had put so much value in, and which gave me a lot of reward. I rose quite high in the ranks of the corporate organization as a senior executive of Atlantis on Paradise Island. Was 8,000 employees. The correlation with excessive thinking and control of life and people's lives, I started to equate that to disease manifesting in my own physical self, again, as an allegory to truth, that if you do this, then this is something to come back to teach you. So anyway, it precipitated a desire at that time to go and enroll in immersive meditation courses. And I just checked myself into an ashram here, the Shivananda on Paradise Island in the Bahamas. And I enrolled and was taught by the Brahmin there in components of course, yoga, being a yoga retreat, but specifically meditation. And I was there for a few weeks. And just after a few weeks, it was tremendous. Plus, tied with yoga is a tremendously good, healthy discipline for the body. But the tying the two together was helpful for me at that time because of what I wanted to accomplish with the disease. And it wasn't a magic pill, and an immediate sort of, miraculous healing. But I did have a moment on the yoga deck when there was one of the persons doing a guided meditation in this instance. And I hadn't gone, it was something called Yoga Nidra. And I went through it, and when you weren't necessarily meant to go to sleep in this, guided this is like 1 hour, laying on your back on your mat. And they would have you go into real heightened detail, focused attention on different parts of your body and different sounds you make within your body, within your heart. And you would visit, so it's a heightened attention to the inner workings within the human body, right? And it's a form of focused attention. And it was teaching me to go within, and I understood that. But when I had finished the 1 hour, she said on that, she called everyone, to wake up sort of, or come to out of the meditation. I opened my eyes and I experienced something I had never, ever experienced in my life. there was a sensation of complete and utter joy that I hadn't experienced before, first of all. Everything had an orange hue to it. Everything that I could perceive around me had a sort of an orange glow to it. And there's just an overwhelming sense of peace. I mean, it was complete, overwhelming sense of peace, and not any identity with the human body or where I was or that I needed to understand, comprehend, or control anything in my environment. It was just sort of like happiness. And I came up and I was just smiling, and I looked at there's 20 other students on the platform, and I looked up at the meditator, and I was just brimming. I was just smiling. I'm like, wow. And I thought she did it to me, right? I thought it was her, right? I said, what did you do to me, right? And I started to, just, that's fantastic. I was just elated. I was extremely elated that I could have an inner experience like this. And I looked around, I suddenly realized, and there was others there, and they were not smiling like me. And I thought, why? So I started to analyze it. Like, why aren't they smiling too? They went through the same guided meditation. Why is it? Isn't this I thought we just took a pill, and this was like a strategy and a technique that everyone, it's just, didn't everyone take the same pill that I just took? I mean, kind of thing. And the teacher was good. She says, because, I started to talk and share what I was experiencing with the others, and they were like, mouths open, listening to me. And then I recognized, I said after a few minutes, I said, and it's leaving me. It's fading, right? All of this. And the teacher was good. She says, that's because you're analyzing it. You're getting back into your mind. And I'm like, oh, cool. And so so there was some events that are highlights. And so I started to believe in, at that moment, the sort of ability to experience different perceptions and perspectives by going within. Like, there was a withinness, right? And in a way that I hadn't had yet in my life. And so I was hooked on meditation. So I came back to my house, and for the next 5 years I meditated religiously right at 5 a.m. before anybody woke up, in the dark with a candle and all of that. And I did get into various states, but to sum that up, I realized that it was like exercise for me. I don't know about other people, but for me it was like exercising a muscle. When you use a muscle in your arm, you don't have to keep, what I mean? You got it, right? And so for me, going into a quiet state of mind, I didn't need to sit cross-legged in the dark with a candle and, a piece of fruit and a glass of water or anything. That it was really just all in the mind. It has nothing to do with the human body, or it doesn't have to. Although I use the human body as a teaching tool to get me to the point to realize that it's not the body, but the body was used at first just to realize it. And so I realized that you can just sort of like not think if you wanted to at any time, and or think if you want to at any time, and that thinking wasn't necessarily have the mastery over you, that I had have the mastery over thinking. And that became a knowingness to me beyond just a belief, because it was an experience. So that was a pivotal moment, and it took time. Other highlights would be, at that time, during that whole period of meditation thing, I somehow started listening to Hay House, and there was repeated talk of this book that these folks that were, fellow meditators, if you will, seemed to have a lot of respect for, and, called A Course in Miracles. And so I said, well, I guess I got to get this book. All right, why not, right? And so I ordered the book, and I instantly recognized it as a sentence, a succinct, perfect sentence, one after the other, of pure truth. That nothing was wasted, no period, no dot, no I. To me, it was perfect prose. It was, better than Shakespeare, and I followed it, and I'm like, I said, thank you, right? Thank you. I asked for it, and here it is. And I had asked and prayed for truth, to understand truth above all things, above career, above, money, above relationships, with, everything. I said, nothing is more important to me than truth. I'd made that pact, way back when I was in the Florida Keys, at one of my jobs. And I remember where I was when I made that pact. But, and so this book came. And as I started with the text and then the lessons, and, I did it all, I'm sorry, I don't know what all is, but I did then the supplements and the teacher's manual. I read it all once or whatever. But it did definitely occur to me that it was only the beginning. And so I decided to spend time with the book, and I ended up reading it over a period of, again, the 5-year period. And because of I already had an experience of the supernatural nature of the New Testament, to have a dialogue, so to speak, with the New Testament when I was in an authentic state, that I could, have a relationship with Jesus through that. And so the same relationship started very quickly to develop with A Course of Miracles. In other words, he would give a very succinct lesson about some aspect of truth. And it wasn't long when I was in a receptive mode that I would experience it in the physical world, in relationships, right, with others, with life. And I'm like, wow. So I just, just nothing else seemed as important to me than this rich source of truth. And so I committed to not just reading the book for head fodder, but try to read it for experience, for the experience of it, for as best. And it wasn't perfect. I realized that, in the subsequent years after reading that knowingness rather than belief is one of those seemingly open-ended things that, I've gone back to the Course of Miracle lessons and lessons that I've read many times before and thought I completely understood, just to see it in a whole different revelation of truth. And it pop, again, even more, and take me into another acceptance of the way things are in truth. And so it is one of those living books that seems to be a part of the life that I am. And that's a cool thing. There are other books that were similar that came along afterwards, because now I've already got an ear for, the channeled message of Jesus, and I have a taste or a flavor of the resonation when it resonates with me, of whether or not I'm listening to something from truth. I think, which works for me, and that's all that matters. And so A Course of Love was good. The Way of Mastery was good. Lori LaValle's book that her father wrote, How to Become a Christ, was good. and quite a few others. And then, there's so much on YouTube nowadays. There's quite a few people I respect a lot, that when I listen to them, there's that resonation that I recognize. And I've learned a long time ago how easy it is to let my guard down when I'm in the present, well, just to let my guard down eventually completely, but that's another thing to learn for me, was another thing to learn. And it just grows and it goes on from there, Wanako. So that's an attempt to give you a bird's eye view. So, although there was a little specifics in there every now and then. Do you want me to go back and fill in some of the voids, or? I don't know if you're finding this interesting or not.
So let's go into some of the specifics. Particularly, how do you get to the state of calming your mind that you were speaking of, this stillness?
It's how do you flex a muscle in your arm? So how to do it already. But if I could explain, that's why I said it's like a muscle, right? It's just like that. If I said, Wanako, flex your bicep, right? You would know how to do it, right? You can't really explain to me how you do it, but you can do it, right? And to me, it's kind of like that. And so stillness then becomes just sort of a cerebral decision to do so. And it's very much like deciding to, do something. So you can do it consciously, you can be conscious. I really enjoy mornings when I wake up, before I get up out of bed, for example. When I'm in that state of every day is a gift. This beautiful thing. We do sleep at night. Every morning there's this period before consciousness fully takes over, and there's this time period right in between the sleep state or the sleeping state and the complete waking state in the morning that I have, like exercising a muscle, learned to dive into and extend the time with. So you really, hoping that you don't have to go to the bathroom right away. And I sit, I can sit there and explore answers very, very openly and easily before the distractions of the day, like how to, taking care of the animals or family or what to do or work or, household stuff or whatever, right? Before I get distracted with things, there's this beautiful moment that I've learned to extend the time of. And so in that moment every day is this opportunity to ask questions like, well, first of all, to check in and to feel what it feels like, to remind myself every day what stillness feels like, to recognize it every day. Oh, this is what stillness feels like, but yet I'm still conscious, but I'm not unconscious. I am quiet. But my mind is there, my self is there, and my awareness is there. And I'm not getting, at this point, thoughts that come uninvited into my head, or memories or regrets or at this stage, it's very consciously directed by me, and it's my time to have a smile. These are some of the things that I do. I have a smile. It comes to me, a smile about the day before, like just sort of like, oh, like if I ever left the previous day with a question mark, why? did they say that, or why did I do that, or why? And if I ever leave a day off with a question mark, one of the cool things about this moment in time in the morning of the very next day is that if there was ever something non-peaceful about something, or some sort of lack of acceptance about something the previous day, almost like a revelation, the answer comes to me early in the morning, and I go, oh yeah, of course. And it's always some component of looking at it from complete love and acceptance, that, and forgiveness, right? So if there was ever any non-forgiveness from the previous day, that first thing in the morning comes the answer of how it's perceived with the mind of forgiveness. And that's a cool thing. And then also kind of, what do you want me to do today? What should I do today? What sort of things, is going to be a part of this day? If there was anything that needed to be planned in a way that took any sort of preparation, right? Because some things in this life do take preparation, right? You have to do some things and so there's an opportunity to take a look at what would bring the greatest amount of ease and acceptance and things, and so there becomes this knowingness where, oh, that's my now priority. That's what you want me to get up and do with the body, or with my mouth, or you know what I mean, with my words, or and so that's a really, really cool moment in time with regards to being still, and a very practical example of how that can be useful to anyone if they haven't experienced it. Because you are going to put this on your YouTube channel, right? Yeah. So does that answer your question about stillness, or do you want me to keep going?
I'd like to go into another thing you were speaking of, your corporate life, and how your spiritual journey, or these changes in you, informed you in your being the manager of so many people. How did you go about that?
Well, when I'm no longer a manager of so many people, I did leave that life to open up my own business with my family at the time, and there was a sense that the corporate life, as I had set it up, was a distraction to what I truly wanted in this world. That the level of involvement that I had habitually trained myself into, again, I was talking about the control of the future and all those things, there was an underlying knowingness that was distracting me and was a source of unhappiness for me. For me, I'm not saying, others can't be happy doing that, but for me, it was a source of unhappiness. And so, because I had allowed it to be a distraction, right? I had perceived it as the need to control the future. And so I did desire to get away from it and do something more simple. And so I did open up my own restaurant, which I don't know if that was more simple, but there was less people involved. And so I did that for a number of years. And that then came down to relationships with fewer people and dear people and special relationships in my life. And so then came a whole period of time and genre with regards to special relationships, wives or a wife. And that was a significant, very significant, and children, and having a child, right? And having special relationships with your wife and your child, right? I mean, this becomes another component of truth. And sometimes it was, for me, a very hard lesson because I ended up going through a divorce after 15 years. And And it wasn't easy, man. Let me tell you, that was some hard introspection. Very, very hard. And I've experienced the death of loved ones, my parents, and with a tremendous amount of peace. But divorce was not something that I could handle with peace. And I was really thrust into looking at special relationships. And there was a number of years of sorting through what that is. And so then what is a holy relationship? And I got through it because I wasn't alone, and that's a huge chapter, Wanako. That could take an hour of discussion. Want to invite me back, but the whole idea of special relationships and how to, experience, what is a holy relationship, and does that mean a holy relationship with one person and not by default every last thing in existence? And I've come to realize that it's the latter, that there's no such thing as a holy relationship with one person and not another. That if you understand and can resonate what a holy relationship is in truth, if you have a knowingness about that I have been given the awareness of that component of truth in this 3D world full of the idea of specialness, that it is synonymous with everyone, and it really then delves into oneness of everything, and that indeed, guess what? I am source, and so are you, from my perspective. And so, yes, it did take quite a bit of personal suffering in the experiences of specialness to have something dawn on my mind, and it's still dawning with regards to source. And that's another good thing we could talk about. So I anticipate your next question. What would you like to talk about now?
So I'm going to open the field to questions, so anyone can ask a question or comment at this point. And by the way, you can do that at any point. You can raise your hand and let me know you want to comment or ask a question. So if there are any comments or questions, please let us know.
Okay. Lori, you have a question? You're on mute.
Oh, sorry. I was talking and you didn't hear a word I said. Thank you, Matt, for all your sharing. These are things you shared, some things that I didn't know about you. I've known you for a while now, but
thank God.
There was brand new information there. So
thank God. I hope you're not keeping track of everything you know about me.
I'm writing it all down, note by note by note. That's it. No, not at all. What I really appreciated is how that connection you had to Jesus, at a young age, and then when you were just a young man, and then the Course in Miracles, and of course continuing on since then. What would you say would be the biggest thing that you and he have done together?
Have done together?
Yeah, like an experience you've had together.
Oh man. What I know about you, Lori, informs my answer to that question. I know that you have expressed a relationship with Jesus very, very on a very personal way that, from your description, sounds different from my experience of the relationship. And so to single out a moment when Jesus told me something or anything of that nature, it's difficult because it's there's so many, thousands and thousands, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but one doesn't seem more special than another. It's sort of, if that makes sense, but wow. Well, all right. One that you would appreciate, I'm sort of getting that something you would appreciate specifically, Lori. Okay. But overall, the main thing probably has been A Course in Miracles. Okay. As in terms of a work of his or a channeled, condensation of truth in one location, it would have to be the Course of Miracles. Okay. But, there's a lot of other stuff collectively. If I put it all together, probably I have spent more relationship with other channel works, like when you collect them all together, than the Course of Miracles. And they're probably too numerous to mention. It wouldn't be sensible to mention it. But anyway, there's one experience that you would appreciate. So there was a particular guided meditation teacher. See, her name was, I think, Lori LaValle. You can find her on How to Become a Christ. And she was leading a guided meditation once. And because, again, I can go into meditation quite easily on my own, when I went into the guided meditation with Lori, I went quite deep, because I completely let go of any attachments to my belief, in the physical world, and I can dive deep, and the awareness, continues on in deep meditations. And anyway, I found myself at one point in a vision that taught me something that I had never experienced before. It was probably most similar to that platform experience that I talked about with the feeling of radiant joy from the ashram. But anyway, so I went into this meditation once where I found myself sitting on the seashore somewhere. I don't know where. And I was looking out at the horizon at a sunset or a sunrise. I couldn't tell which. And in front of me were some fishing nets, some old tattered fishing nets, but old ones like you would make a long time ago, not like plastic, synthetic nets, but like made out of twine or something. And I was just sitting there in this vision, and I felt the presence of someone there with me. I never saw the someone. I felt the presence, the nearness of someone, and that presence and nearness felt like, and I told you about this when I came to, felt like pure love, just pure love, and that it was from the presence of someone, which I guess needed to happen because I hadn't experienced it on my own without the introduction of a someone or another. I'm not trying to speak of separation, but there was a sense that this other was Jesus, and but from a time, a long ago, when perhaps maybe I had been in his presence before, type of awareness. I mean, that's just a guess, right? Or that's what it felt like. I'm not saying that I was. I'm just saying that's what it felt like, and that informed me about a feeling of unconditional love that is possible. So it was a revelation about Jesus at the same time as an introduction and a gift that I didn't earn. There was no effort in it, of what complete and unconditional love of everything without finding anything to judge in it, without specifying any aspect of it and separating anything in any way, feels like, in a knowingness. And I'm like, cool. Thank you for that. And so it became a knowing, right? Another, sort of knowing that when I came out of when I came out of the meditation, it was, the residual of it was still there, and I could sort of pull it up, but not really. And, as time went on, it became, a little more difficult to pull up that exact feeling again as I delved into the world more fully. But yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, Lori. That was cool.
Thank you, Matt. That's a beautiful experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, then we will continue. Oh, there is. Okay.
Frankie? Whoever, you have to take yourself off of mute, everybody, if you're going to ask a question.
Frankie, go ahead and unmute, and you can ask or comment or whatever.
Thank you. Okay. What is your awareness when you connect with Jesus or with God or universal intelligence or whatever? How is that for you now?
What did you ask? I think the question was breaking up a little, Frank. Did you say, what is my awareness? You said?
Yes. What is your awareness when you connect with Jesus now? How is it for you?
What is my awareness like when I connect with truth now? With there's description of the idea of the holy instant in the Course in Miracles that may give some foundation to my answer. The holy instant, as it's described in the book, in my experience, I may not use the same words that the book used, but there's a stillness of my own state that has been a theme pretty much in my whole discussion here today, that theme of stillness. Now, the stillness is something that I have no idea how other people experience, but I know how I experience it. And definitely the connection period, when I perceive that I am connected or in alignment of the words that we use, but there's a feeling of a knowingness that I'm receptive, that I'm not putting up any sort of barriers to God. And it requires me we use a lot of words, man. We use words like release, let go, surrender, be humble. You know, I've heard so many words used, but I've also heard everybody give a different definition for those words that mean something to them.
Your words, honey, just your words.
Yeah, no, so I would use those words. I would say, to be still. What is it to be still?
I believe I just caught that feeling. Thank you.
Sorry?
I said I just caught that feeling you were conveying. Thank you.
Oh, you're looking to get the feeling. Okay, very cool. Got it. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah,
good. Yeah, words don't really do it. So
no,
I'm glad
Thank you for sharing.
I forgot that was one of your gifts, Frankie. Yeah, cool. Yeah, Frankie's a great. I don't know what you are, Frankie. You are. I know you are sensitive to the heart and feelings, not so much words. And this is an interview, so we just did an interview on a whole nother level there once. So interviews are usually about words. We just did one with feeling as the communication device. I wonder if the world that listens to YouTube is going to do that, if it's going to still be communicated.
Any more comments or questions?
Yeah, definitely. There's stillness is not when I'm worried about something, right? Or thinking about something, right? Or distracted by something. Although I can be doing things in the world, but I can still be still as my body is active, right? I can still be still I'm being still in this conversation, right? And so I'm still very functional in the world. So stillness has nothing to do with the body, right? It's to do with the mind.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Hi, Michael. Yes.
Yeah, we hear you and the music that you're playing.
Yeah, I know. Let me ask my wife to stop that. Just a minute. Hey, Karen, could you turn the music off and be quiet for a minute? I'm talking to somebody here. Okay, I'll be done in a second. Thanks. Okay. It's about to happen. All right, good. Okay, I have friends that, obviously, I have friends that have read the course, and then they heard about A Course in Love, and they read that, and they liked it a lot better than the Course in Miracles. So you could say they found a difference between the two. And for me, the difference is really like a chasm. Because Jesus is always telling us in the Course in Miracles that there is no world. And, that's kind of a real bottom line. If there's no world and all there is mind, he really is doing that because he wants us to come home. He wants us to get out of this whole space-time body-mind thing. And then you read books like A Course in Love, where it's almost like all the religions that I've found, where, as the Course puts it, they're bringing truth to duality instead of bringing duality to truth. They're making the world real. And that was always whenever I would read one of these other books, you also mentioned A Course in Mastery, that was what they did. And it always seemed like the stumbling block for people reading A Course was exactly that. The idea that there's no world. So that became the litmus test,
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, since you're part of a group that's well represented here today, anybody could jump in, I suppose. How is it that you have found the ability to reconcile the two ideas, that there is a world and that there isn't a world?
Thanks, Michael. Funny enough, I had talked about that earlier this morning with somebody on another Zoom call in another form, but I think it's the same thing that you're saying. What I've been taught by, not taught, but what I've been shown is that if I go about calling the world unreal or highlighting my errors or saying I did something wrong or that's a mistake or that's furthering the illusion, or anything that as you said, has to do with duality and being human, that if I am saying that is wrong because a course says that it's stopping me from waking up, what I've come to understand, and now when I read A Course in Miracles too, it's there. It's like, remember I said things change. You can read something and understand it one way. When you go back and read it, a year or two later, it's like, oh, there it is. And so all right, let me get to my point. The judgment that one makes that they're doing something wrong keeps that wrongness alive. I think, as you said, that it's calling it real. And it's not that the way that I reconcile that very same seemingly dilemma is that it's not a dilemma at all. It's that they both are accepted with acceptance. Now, A Course of Love talks a little bit more about acceptance than A Course of Miracles. It uses that word more, but it's in A Course of Miracles too. And so, in other words, if I do things in this world not to take it very lightly. If I have a sex drive, for example, or if I have a food drive or a safety drive, meaning keeping a roof over my head or lock my doors, or as you said, the drive for miracles in one of your talks, want to know that these are all things that are a part of even the drive for illusion, the drive for the opposite of illusion, miracle, which is just a drive or a desire to straighten the mind's perception. That the only way that I understand the vision that's talked about to be experienced is to have complete non-judgment of anything that comes into experience. that it's neither right nor wrong, desirable or undesirable. Whether that's illusion or non-illusion, that it's all embraced with the same lightheartedness and love. And so I don't fight against or resist against or call out, blockages and misty clouds of illusion that stop me from seeing truth as enemies of state that need to be dispersed and disbanded, because it keeps them around, that very same thing. And so to live in duality and to recognize the eternal nature of myself at the same time seems, to my understanding, to be what's going on here. That one is not more, when one ceases to be desired over the other, then the birth of nothingness is the birth of peace. When one ceases to be desired, or just desire itself goes away, right? When you don't even need to desire miracles anymore, right? Then, so if you engage in the sex drive, don't judge yourself. If you engage in the food drive or the safety of the body drive against, hurricanes or earthquakes or World War III or a pandemic, if you engage in any desire, so what? Just at the same time that you are doing the 3D, 4D thing, at the same time, bring that stillness to the table. Bring the holy instant. Bring that relationship that Frankie asked to describe to every one of those instances where I'm doing the 3D experience. And it doesn't stop the illusion from being dreamt. When did we decide that a dream was a bad thing? Why is dreaming a bad thing? It's just a dream, okay, so it's not real, but why does that have to be bad thing, right? It's not truth and eternity. Okay, good, wonderful. Okay, good, you win your point. It's not real, so why do I, but you're supposed to wake up. You're supposed to want to wake up. Well, I think I can have a happy dream and wake up here and have a reconciliation with this experience and the knowingness of another nature of self, right? You could call it the true nature of self, but if I say true, it can't carry a feeling of better than when I say the word true as opposed to false. That in my heart, I can't label it or judge it to be better than. And when I experience that, then things are just what is. They becomes the what isness, and I'm cool. I'm cool with that. I mean, that's how I reconcile it, Michael, personally.
Go ahead, Lori.
Thank you. This is one of the things I've always appreciated about you, is that you're very clear on everybody's equality. Nobody's better, nobody's worse, nobody's good, nobody's bad. Everybody's just equal. And I think you brought that up in your last answer there too. Something you were really helpful in teaching me. So thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Lord. Thanks.
Did you hear me now?
Yes, Michael.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'd like to respond. So if you listen to some of my talks, you really realized, you may remember that I came into self-realization before there was even A Course in Miracles, at least available to the public. And I was a Christian, Catholic, not Roman, priest, serving communion and all that, right? So truly, everything that happens in the dream is just a dream. But the realization of the self is eternal. It's real. Mm-hmm. And so I'm well aware of that. But when I eventually came to study the Course, I realized that it was taking me far beyond anything that I'd ever understood and worked on before. And the more that I work on it, the more that I realize, and it is a self-study course, so I realize that in the dream, it's all a dream, and it's not to be taken seriously. So the Course is part of the dream. All these other books that I mentioned, they're all part of the dream. Mm-hmm. They're here for a reason. They're here for a purpose. And so, for my own personal practice, I am getting the way, you might say, is getting narrower and narrower for me. And so I can only take in A Course in Miracles for my own personal practice, which means that that's what I'm teaching, because that's what I'm learning. I'm not, so I understand that, teach only love, for that is what you are. Also, be vigilant only for God and His kingdom. And that's pretty much that last step, the third step in the Holy Spirit's curriculum, is where I'm at right now. And I don't reconcile anything for myself that doesn't agree with how I understand the Course. And it makes the way narrower, and it makes me less popular in the dream. And that's okay, because it's just a dream. As far as what we do in the dream, I totally agree. It's not hard to forgive things that happen in the dream, right? Because they're just a dream. Mm-hmm. Things happen to us all in dreams. And so we understand the idea about comparing what we think is reality, this event that's called the world, the universe, etc. Mm-hmm. We understand from the Course that it's all part of the dream. And I think it's really awesome to my personal experience, to leave the world of dreams. I'm really out there, on a limb. And there's only one way off of this limb at this point. It's God taking the final step, and that's how I want it to be. And I don't have a stake in the world. It doesn't mean anything to me. So that's where I'm at. And I'm not judging anything in the dream. I'm not judging anybody. That is foolishness. That's making, as you say, that's making the dream real. And yet, in this course that I'm studying, I'm being instructed, I'm being led to leave the dream. So that's how the cards are being dealt to me now.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm better than anybody, because I don't even exist. That would be another ridiculous statement about the dream.
It's nice. It's nice to have said that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that was cool. I totally get everything you said, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've just been really loving all the description of your experience, and I resonate with all of that. And all of those experiences that you're talking about, they're not of this world. Those are the times when we just went beyond into eternity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, eternity is what it is. Yeah.
Even miracles, it's a Course in Miracles. Even miracles are just part of the dream.
Yeah.
And Jesus says that where it really happens is in the mind. You have to heal the mind. Forget about miracles.
Yeah.
As we commonly understand what miracles are, forget it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's cool. And yeah, relationships that we have with others. Yeah, I was unpopular today. It's funny you said that, Michael. I was on a Zoom group and they sent me a letter afterwards and said, thanks for sharing, but don't come back. And I knew I was, I had a feeling I was going to get a letter like that. That was a new experience for me. And then for you to suggest that just now, I'm not surprised. Yeah, I mean, the desire to completely wake up from the dream is not going to be popular to many that, or to reflections of myself or whatever it is, that still sort of enjoy the different tastes and flavors of the different energy experiences here, and enjoy the different, the differences of flavors of separation. There's some enjoyment to it, and maybe it's a reflection of myself. I mean, I don't know. When I experience others that are holding on to those experiences of separation for the experience of separation itself, or the dream or whatever, and I just don't want to wake up, perhaps. Or they don't value it more than the experience of this. They may report that they want to wake up, but it may not necessarily truly be valued by them because they still want more of the experience of separation. Why? If that's me, it is what it is. It's, again, not to judge it, right? If it's me and these people are only a reflection of me as an allegory of the truth that I am as source. If I am source, then they are a reflection of me being the source of them in my experience, that is. And so if I am the source, then they reflect to me my mind and where my mind is at. And so the experience of separation is happening, not to judge it. It's just when does waking up become more valuable? And when it does, I guess we'll pop out of the dream like you're suggesting.
I'm an astrologer too, And that's all about the dream. It's all about the ego. But it's taught me so much. It's taught me to look back on my life. I'm 77 now. I have a lot to look back on. And I've been able to see and understand a lot more now. It's just like a framework for looking at the personality. You know, there are so many ways to do that, and that's one that appeals to me. So that's participating in the dream. And of course, as long as we have bodies here, we're meant to participate in the dream. So I'm just saying, and another thing I really love about the Course is it talks about how every one of us is completely unique personality. And the Holy Spirit needs that, needs our uniqueness. And our uniqueness draws to us people that have similar qualities that resonate with us. And so they're the people that we're meant to teach and learn with. And I think it's really important to emphasize that it's teach and learn, because no one's better, no one's greater, no one's actually at all really different from anybody. It's only these dream characteristics that distinguish us as separate from anybody else. But nevertheless, because that's how everybody's sort of focused on the dream as being real, that's how we pick our friends. You know, that's how we find the people that we can learn and study with. So it's sort of, I mean, and we certainly ought to enjoy it. I mean, just now, as we talk to each other, I'm sure you're having the same experience I am, where this is really stimulating. This is really the kind of where the rubber meets the road, man. And so it's not that we should like try and we shouldn't judge ourselves that way either. We shouldn't like try and, you know, and I don't think that desire is a bad thing either, because that's how this whole thing is that's really the energy that makes the whole thing happen. And obviously it's not, you know, like the dream is not bad, because why? Who's dreaming this? Well, there's one source called the ego. It's just something we made up. And then there's the Holy Spirit. And so we have a split mind, and, you know, it would be stupid to judge this situation in the sense of it's wrong, we shouldn't be doing it. We are doing it, and we don't really have a choice. So we could come in, and our role could be to put it down all the time, but that's not going to work. That's not going to make friends with anybody, right? So we do have to be here and live this thing, and with everything we've got. And if something like, I love to sing, I'm going to keep on singing. And it's a wonderful way to express the joy that I feel. And it doesn't mean I have to sing holy songs. Shit, I love Elvis Presley. You know, I love getting down into the nitty gritty of this dream. If it stirs the soul, that's what I'm here for. You know?
Yeah.
So we really do have to be ourselves we have to be ourselves in the dream and enjoy being in the dream. That's for sure. If we don't enjoy it, well, what are we teaching?
Yeah.
So obviously, yeah, it's really a trip, isn't it? So you have to walk in two worlds. There's what Jesus did, right? Jesus did that. Our teacher did that. Right? But look what he ended up doing. He ended up resurrecting. God, the focus that he had to do that. You know, he had to totally focus on heaven. And so he says in the Course that the body became nothing and disappeared.
Yeah. There's another component that I've been made aware of. I know we're running close on time. There's another component. You talk about cool components of this experience of life. There's another cool component I'm being shown the truth of more and more most recently is that of the oneness of mind, that the unity of us all here is a cool thing. In other words, the mind that Jesus or anyone had, right, that you have, that I have, is a shareable component of this experience. And maybe we don't have enough time, but that's another cool thing to talk about, is the oneness of the one mind, right? And the individuated experience, then connecting with one mind, and then you can ultimately, I guess, call it, the mind of source. But anyway, maybe we don't have enough time, but it's a really cool, another aspect of the real awesomeness of this of truth. Anyway.
Yeah, let's wrap up for the recording. If you want to continue speaking afterwards, that's possible. Well, let's wrap up the recording. So, is there a question that I haven't asked you, Matthew, that you'd like to address? If so, please address it.
No, I had no agenda, man.
Okay, then would you please let us know how one can reach you if one wants to reach you and reach out to you and connect with what you have to share?
Sure. My phone number on WhatsApp or Telegram is 242-376-4440. 242-376-4440. I'm on WhatsApp or Telegram. That's the easiest. And then my email is mknowles44@gmail.com.
Okay, yeah. Give it to me. Write it out for the show notes as well.
Okay.
Yeah, wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us here. And I think it's so valuable to have this diversity of speakers with so many beautiful ways of conveying love to the world and sharing, and not only to the world, but also to reminding us of who we are, so that we can also choose to be happy in many more ways than we maybe are aware of that it's possible, right?
Yeah, and thank you too for your efforts, in putting this together, and your desire to experience love and share it.
Yes, that's the most important. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for all your comments and questions, and feel free to comment or ask questions afterwards so that one of us can answer if we have an answer. And otherwise, it's just another conversation where we all learn from it. And please review the podcast and let people know about it, and subscribe so that more people can benefit from all these beautiful conversations and sharings. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Monica. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Michael, Lori,